What is up? It has been a while for sure. It's probably been like a week or like 8 days or something like that. I had the flu, so I was out for a little while, so you did not get any predictions or breakdowns or anything like that for this UFC card, which is actually going on right now as I'm recording this, it's actually a pretty great prelims card so far. It's like all finishes and stuff. But today, if you couldn't tell already by the title, I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 UFC fighters of all time. I was very excited to make this video. I wanted to make it for a while, and I think now is just the perfect time to do it since I missed the predictions video since I was sick. But there's not much else I really have to say. I'm not going to leave you guys waiting. Let's get on to my top 10 UFC fighters of all time. So starting off with my number 10 fighter on my list, I have Conor McGregor. A lot of people don't have Conor McGregor in their top 10, but I think you have to have Conor McGregor in your top 10. Conor McGregor, first ever simultaneous double champ, and he basically made the sport how it is today. Straight up made the sport how it is today. Made a lot of these fighters how they are, such as Ilia Topuria, right? Ilia Topuria straight up copying Conor McGregor in this whole thing that he had with Alexander Volkanovski. But just like Conor McGregor, he stood his word, and I think Conor McGregor is one of the best UFC fighters of all time. He made this sport how it is, and he makes my number 10 spot. Moving on to my number 9 spot, I have the guy who beat Conor McGregor in an insanely huge fight, actually the biggest fight of all time, Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think he's extremely overrated. I do think that he's extremely overrated, but I think that he is the number 9 fighter of all time. That 29-0 record is padded, but it's still pretty impressive enough to make this list, in my opinion. He beat people of the likes of Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Edson Barboza, right? But, you know, I do think his record's pretty padded, and I do think he is pretty overrated, but he still makes my number 9 spot today. Next up, my number 8 spot is Henry Triple C Cejudo, even though his return was very unneeded, unnecessary, and disappointing, as he's 0-2, but I guess he really needs money, because apparently he's not retiring yet, but he definitely needs to retire. He's never getting that belt back, but in his prime, he was one of the most dominant fighters I've ever seen, and he's probably the most decorated athlete of all time. I mean, what is he? Olympic gold medalist, you know, simultaneous double champ, defended his belts at flyweight and bantamweight, which is something that Conor McGregor couldn't do. He also beat freaking Demetrius Johnson. I mean, who else says that they can beat Demetrius Johnson? Who else can say that they beat prime Demetrius Johnson? Nobody. Absolutely nobody. So that's why I think Henry Cejudo makes my list as number 8 as the best fighter of all time. Next up, at number 7, we have Amanda Nunes, by far the best women's UFC fighter of all time. Best women's MMA fighter of all time, probably. I mean, you got people like Chris Cyborg, Kayla Harrison. Ronda Rousey is kind of like the Conor McGregor of the women's MMA, but I just don't think anyone does it like Amanda Nunes, man. Countless title defenses, simultaneous double champ, literally ran that bantamweight division, and they literally created the featherweight division for her and Chris Cyborg to fight each other. So it's like, I mean, it does not get any better than that in the women's divisions. Amanda Nunes was absolutely dominant. She beat every single person. She ran through everybody. The only person who really beat her was Juliana Pena, and Nunes got her revenge on her for sure. So she makes my number 7 on this list, no doubt. Next up at number 6, we're really starting to get into like the really, really good fighters, like my GOATs. And at number 6, I got Jose Aldo. Jose frickin' Aldo. He's my featherweight GOAT. Some people trying to say Alex Volkanovski. Volk was great, but dude, Jose Aldo, he is featherweight. I feel like a lot of people can overlook truly how great he was because McGregor knocked him out. But dude, what was he doing before McGregor knocked him out? What is it, like an 18-fight win streak? It was something insane. Unbeaten at featherweight, unbeaten in the UFC. My featherweight GOAT. my freaking featherweight goat. He has more title defenses, most title defenses in featherweight, UFC featherweight history. I mean, you can't make it up. You cannot make it up. Jose Aldo is an absolute dog. He's the best fighter in featherweight history, and he's my number 6 all time. We have reached the top 5, and my number 5, which is very interchangeable with Jose Aldo, in my opinion, is DC, Daniel Cormier. It's another one where people can overlook how great he was because John Jones schooled him. But roided up John Jones is going to school anybody, right? DC only freaking lost to Stipe besides that. DC is a dog. DC is a goat. DC's so good. He ran that division when John Jones wasn't there. He ran that shit when John Jones wasn't there. And he ran heavyweight as well. Man, he was heavyweight champion, light heavyweight champion, simultaneous 2-division champ, knocked out Stipe Miocic, who's the heavyweight goat. Stipe did beat him twice when Daniel Cormier was like 43, by the way. Stipe beat him twice when Daniel Cormier was in his 40s, right? But like, dude, before that, DC ran that division. He ran both of them when John Jones wasn't there. I mean, straight up. DC was an absolute animal. And he's my number 5. And now we got number 4. And these next 4 are like the real goats. The real freaking goats. We got number 4, Anderson Silva. Wow, Anderson Silva was so great. I mean, how many title defenses did he even have, dude? It was too many to even count. You know, he schooled everyone in the middleweight division. He's the best striker of all time. I mean, the things he was doing to some people, I mean, it was just insane. It was just like he was up here and everyone else was way down here. You know, I mean, I just can't even explain how great Anderson Silva was. I don't even think that there's much else to be said. He's not the best, but he's certainly up there. He's number 4 all time on my list. My number 3 fighter of all time, which can be maybe a little bit controversial because a lot of people have him at number 2 or even number 1, is GSP, Georges St-Pierre. He was great. What was his record? Like 17-2, right? Middleweight champion, best welterweight of all time, no doubt. He beat everyone. He ran through everybody. And the 2 people that beat him, Matt Hughes and Matt Serra, he avenged both those losses. And there are times where he was kind of there to be hit in some of his fights. I mean, he's been knocked out a couple times. He's been rocked a few times in the UFC, but GSP is still one of the best UFC fighters of all time, and I think that he's the most balanced UFC fighter of all time. I mean, he's literally perfect everywhere. I think he's the most balanced. I don't think he's better at striking or at wrestling or at jiu-jitsu or at anything. I mean, he's just like the best everywhere. I mean, it's crazy. He makes my number 3, and he's the best welterweight of all time. And at number 2, we have Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. I know you guys all see it coming. Number 2, number 1, right? Even though a lot of people have Demetrius Johnson like farther down the list. I mean, I've seen lists where Demetrius Johnson's like 7 or 8. I think that's insane. I think that's absolutely insane. 13 title defenses. The most dominant champion of all time, no doubt. 100%. Just he doesn't get enough attention as he should because he was in flyweight, right? But dude, he is the most dominant champion. I mean, for sure, 13 consecutive title defenses. He's defending his belt at 1 championship now because they traded him for the lousy Ben Askren. Why would they do that? Demetrius Johnson, he's the GOAT. Or, he's not the GOAT, but he's up there. He's the flyweight GOAT. I'll tell you that much. He knocked out Henry Cejudo and then lost a split decision to him and then left the UFC, but he was still one of the most dominant champions of all time, and I do not think he gets enough attention for how good he was. He gets number 2 on my list. Now we have what everyone already knew was coming from the start. The GOAT, the best UFC fighter of all time, John Bones Jones. He is the best. He's undefeated. I know his record says 28-1, but that was a DQ loss with the terrible, terrible Steve Mazzagatti ref who should have stepped in way sooner, man. He is 29-0. Never lost a fight in his life. Heavyweight champion, light heavyweight champion, the best light heavyweight fighter of all time, the best UFC fighter of all time. I don't care if he was on roids. He has the longest reach in UFC history, except for this guy that just came into the UFC, but that doesn't even matter right now. 84.5-inch reach, 6'5". I mean, absolutely insane physique, insane body type for MMA. It's almost like he was put on this earth to be an MMA fighter. He's the most dominant UFC fighter of all time. And, you know, in my opinion, and in hopefully everyone's opinion, he's the best UFC fighter of all time. Not the best person by any means, for sure, but he's definitely the best UFC fighter.